Hello, everybody, chaps and chapettes, and everyone else. It's your boy Farouk hosting the third episode of the Nobodies. Joining me today are my co-hosts Hazzamaxman
Hey.
and my fellow co-host Jason Mars.
Hi, everybody.
This today is the 14th of February, 2021. It is Valentine's Day. I hope you all are having
Pringles.
I hope you all are having a wonderful day with your significant other or with yourself. And welcome to the podcast. Today we'll be discussing. What was we discussing again? Oh yeah, we're discussing things. YouTube. We'll be discussing YouTube today, and all the weird things that go on there and in there and everywhere.
Well, as you can tell by our depleted numbers, we are the single Pringles of the group.
We are the three musketeers.
The three stooges of cool.
Who are living. So in terms of YouTube, what's been going on in YouTube land, my fellow co-hosts? I think obviously the first thing we were discussing was the whole James Charles fiasco,
which I think we were initially discussing about how we were supposed to, whether it was a he or she or they or z or
I think that according to online sources, they refer to themselves as a he. They consider themselves a boy. Obviously, if we are wrong, this is it is online sources.
Yeah.
So if we are wrong, it's not our.
Yeah, from his own Twitter account, from 2019 post, he mentions that he goes by he and him, but he calls himself she and her, which I think was the main discussion point. It was like, so
let's remember,
I mean, his Twitter post says he him, but then he himself calls him something else.
Yes,
2019 was more than a year ago. A lot has changed in the past year and a bit.
That is our source. We are basing ourselves on that Twitter post. Don't cancel us.
Yes,
please
don't.
We've only just started. We can't end like this.
We've got nothing
our third
to live
episode.
For.
3 times and you're out. So yeah.
But no, because we're talking about his. If you hadn't seen it, James Charles had basically decided to do a photo shoot of basically pretending to be pregnant using a prosthetic pregnancy belly, and then basically did the photo shoot about it, and people did not like that. People did not like the fact that this person who refers himself as him decided to try and pretend to be pregnant.
It was certainly unusual to look at. I'll say that much, because I don't know about you guys, but YouTube has basically been my lifeline during the pandemic. I literally wake up and I'm like, brush teeth, eat breakfast, YouTube. Oh yeah, oxygen. That's important too, I guess. So I'm just like scrolling through my YouTube, and in between anime videos and videos from sports channels and etc. Right in between, wedged perfectly in the middle of my YouTube scrolls, is that post. And yeah, let's just say it caught the eye. I definitely couldn't ignore it after I scrolled through it.
Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah, it seems a bit strange. Obviously, each to their own in terms of what they believe. But when you post something online, I feel like it's a bit, a bit peculiar.
It becomes the whole death of the author kind of thing, where as soon as you've released it, it's no longer up to what the original post intention. It's more how it's interpreted by its audience. And I think that's part of the things, like one of the things that we were discussing a couple of weeks ago about whether Trump should be held accountable. And like you could argue that even though his original post is more like talking about, oh yeah, he didn't trust the electoral result, but as soon as that post got sent out, it was interpreted differently to his original concept.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the thing. There's so many different variations of people out there that the reaction you'll get will always vary from being positive and reinforcing to destructive and damaging, and there will always be those who critique. But the thing is that when you start publishing certain things of certain quality, especially like Twitter doesn't seem to have this ability to. Well, it does have this, age restriction content. I presume I don't use Twitter. You haven't gathered by now, and so I'm not familiar that if there is a gated ability or ability to check what age you are to see such content. But it is quite, you know, it seems less like unlike YouTube or Facebook, where if you publish something like that, it would get instantly taken down and reported. It seems this stuff is allowed to stay online. Uh, And so it seems that, yeah, Death of the Author, because this stuff is allowed to remain on said platform, it allows more people to see and react, and therefore create a greater controversy if it's a controversial thing. But no, it seems. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, because I know a lot more of these sites. Like I remember watching, I follow a particular person, and she's literally she's generally quite wholesome, and she like plays the ukulele, but because of her body type, all her stuff's been taken down.
Mm.
And it's like, so she's now gone into Twitter, because I know on Twitter they do have, you can make it age restricted. And you can, but the point is that only people over 18 can see that content if you choose to. But then at the same time, so I think I personally quite like that, because it says it's up to the person's discretion. Once they click the button, say, "Can I see it?" You're basically accepting the fact that you could see something that's not particularly savory.
Yeah.
And it's kind of becoming that. But at the same time, though, you got Facebook and Instagram recently clamping down on, particularly mainly racial, in the face of racial abuse, particularly to footballers.
Right.
After, and that's a slippery slope that started after Trump's accounts got deleted. It's now like they can delete any account that they don't see as suitable, which is, I mean, if they're doing racial abuse, that's fine. It's just, it's always the case with stuff like that. It's a slippery slope. Like, where's that line drawn? Who decides where that line is drawn? I mean, if the organization says they're going to take responsibility for that, then that's fine. It's up to them.
Yeah. But that's I mean, as you said, it's a very slippery slope, and it's obviously up to the person who hosts. I suppose I guess you could say it's up to both the creator and also the website to manage what's allowed and not allowed. But at the same time, I can imagine it's quite difficult to truly create this line between what is allowed. When there's so much ambiguity in certain regards. Obviously, when it comes to racial abuse, that is unacceptable. No one should be doing it. No one should be promoting it. But there are some topics I'm like with this. I guess, yeah, there are some things which are, some people expressing themselves, which is fine, but then sometimes it can cross a line of, not being quite appropriate or being considered a bit more taboo.
With this particular case, it's quite hard to figure out the definitive quote unquote action to do, simply because of the fact that nothing wrong has really been done. The only thing you could say is that the content is somewhat unpleasant, but that's not really anything wrong, because perfectly non controversial content can be deemed unpleasant according to certain viewers. Like, for example, watching anything to do with American politics for me is deemed unpleasant, but that doesn't mean that it's a highly controversial topic, even though it happens to be. Or
Yeah,
I deem
there's also like,
watching, I don't know, I deem watching sometimes documentaries unpleasant, but that doesn't mean documentaries are controversial. It's just very unusual because of the nature of the subject matter. It's like, what do you really say? Do you say, no, get rid of it? Because then basically you're saying, get rid of any opinions that aren't the norm. Yeah, status quo. Woohoo, we're back in high school again. Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
do
if you
think that
don't, then what?
it is definitely one of those things where it's like context is important for that kind of stuff. Like, you could easily have someone just rambling on, and like Like, it's very clear that he's trying to be offensive, but because the language used wasn't, like, if you just look on the surface, it wasn't themed. And I think that's why, like, I'm not too worried about the kind of racial notation, because there's a very clear language that has to be used for people to go, oh, that's clearly a racist statement. Because, unfortunately, due to historical reasons, we've created that language. But when it comes to, like, if you're just trying to offend someone, you can use anything. Like, there's no, like, key words that can be used to say you're trying to be offensive to someone, because you could use those same words to describe something. And depending on the term, you could say, like, oh, that person is fat, or, like, that's a very offensive thing. You can say that to offend someone, but at the same time, you could say that about yourself. So it's like, oh, I've got fat over the last month because of revision stress. Like, that's not an offensive term. That's me talking about myself. So it's hard to just kind of very quickly and easily filter that out.
You actually bring up a very interesting point. So, recently, mainly because of lockdown, and we don't really have another way of communicating with people apart from via social media and online platforms, there has been a large increase in the number of cases. So, because so many people are online nowadays, communicating via online as primary platforms, there's suddenly been an increase in the number of cases of sensitive tweets being posted, sensitive posts and comments being deleted. But do those members of the audience who make those comments have a right to do so because we operate under the assumption that they are making similar comments about themselves? Or do we deem it as outright offensive content trying to hurt someone? And then how do you tell the difference between the two, right?
Yeah, that's why it's a slippery slope, because there's no real way of knowing until it's a little bit too late. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
So it's a spicy meatball, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much people can like consider in terms of ramifications of what they say. I mean, don't get me wrong. I believe if you say something racist, then yeah, that's dumb. You shouldn't. Or something that's outwardly, offensive. But then there's some things which some people put out, like this whole, with James Charles, or with even another example is the PewDiePie doing what was it, VTubing? I believe it was, or put an anime filter on his recording device. And apparently, I don't know the details specifically about that, but I remember hearing that he got called out for it because of it. I don't know if you guys know more about this than I do.
I
Obviously,
unfortunately don't, but this topic
No, I haven't heard anything.
unfortunately relates to another very similar one. So I don't know if you guys have been watching The Mandalorian, but one of the
yeah.
Mandalorian's main
I
stars,
haven't.
Gina Carano, got fired recently in response to those anti-Semitic posts that she made on her Twitter and Instagram like months ago, and
Yeah.
she made a very interesting career move. Let's just call it interesting because it's a terrible career move. And the nice way to say terrible is interesting. Like the nice way of calling someone selfish would be to call them independent. She has decided to take on a movie with Ben Shapiro.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like, what do you say in response to that? You're like, right, Ben Shapiro voluntarily.
The thing is that people actually agree with, like, Ben Shapiro on a lot of things. So it's kind of like one of those things where you just like, it's not necessarily the best career move if she's trying to get a mainstream audience or trying to get as many people to agree with her as possible. But at the same time, though, that's her opinion, and that's she's gonna she's gonna support someone that actually goes, oh, you know what, you're not talking shit, you're not. And I think there is a lot of stuff around this. Like, you could easily just say, like, that this debates have been going on for ages, and it's like, because of the fact that it hasn't really been discussed properly, or the fact that people's whatever his opinions one way or another has been shut down. It's been slowly been, like, seeping below it. So there's now a group of people who actually, quite a lot of people might actually agree with her, but because it's not the prevailing truth, or what society deems as good, it doesn't matter, because she'll still get a fan base.
The
Yeah.
problem, though, with her specific career move is she got fired for making anti Semitic comments, and if you have that opinion, you have that opinion. Yeah. But
Yeah.
her her boss, John Favreau, is Jewish, At no point did she think, insulting my boss's kind might not be the best idea I've had. It may be a good one.
Oh, it wasn't John Favreau. I don't think it was. I don't think it was John Favreau who got her who told her to get lost.
No, I mean I don't think he did. No, but my point is you're working for someone who is Jewish. Don't you think making anti-Jewish comments might land you in some hot water? Maybe, just maybe.
But do you think it's interesting that as the director is Jewish, do you find it interesting that he wasn't the person who said, you know what, you're fired? Like it was someone above board who may or may not have been Jewish who made that decision. When actually he was very much kind of like,
because she could have easily have responded if he was the one to fire her, saying that you fired me on unjust, subjective, unclear grounds just because I've said something you don't like. You fired me. I can't have my own opinion. The fact that it's someone who isn't Jewish makes it more objective, I guess.
but at the same time, that's always happened. Like that's happened throughout the history. Like you could literally say it's like, oh, they split because of creative differences. Like that's always been a thing.
That's true.
It's that pathway of that kind of thing happening has always happened. Whereas this is I think this is a very clear, oh, you've been fired because of your views. Whereas before you could have said, look, I'm not. Are you prepared to continue working with me if I'm gonna, as you said, those racist statements? Or sorry, those statements that I find offensive. Then I don't think that would have been. I honestly don't think that would have been an issue, and everyone was just gone, oh, that makes sense. It's like don't bite the hand that feeds you stuff.
Yes.
Maybe we should move on to a slightly more cheery topic before our viewers or single viewer decides. The world's such a terrible place.
I mean,
it is.
you may.
Are we honestly gonna pretend it's not?
We know, yeah, I don't think you can, but you can definitely take 5 minutes of levity, I suppose. No. Speaking of other topics, I'm just thinking, or I'm just going through the list of stuff. Off the top of my off YouTube, obviously, a topic that I think we very briefly mentioned in the past is VTubers. I think we mentioned not to ever watch them. I think
we've never admitted to ever watching them.
Yeah, I think we may have mentioned.
Well, you know, we advised our audience previously, or I advised the audience previously that you should don't watch it, don't do it. It's not good. I mean, obviously, I meant that in jest, but
to be honest with you, I've been following this like this person's an animator, and all she did was turn her animated persona. Like it wasn't like it's literally like a fennec. Like it's like literally like it's a piss take of like it's not even like what you can do your traditional VTuber stuff. Which is just like I was like, oh, this is really funny. Like I'm actually like my character now. Like I'm actually the thing I've been drawing for years.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how that it's now. It's allowing people who who can't do like animators who don't particularly want to do face reveals, who like their privacy and all that kind of stuff, to actually start streaming.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to mention. It was like and discuss is like how even though so to say that VTubing has allowed a whole generation of people who previously were probably wary or concerned about having their face or their public image or their image in the public eye, and discuss how what benefits there are in comparison to all when I say old style, I mean as in like when people do actual live action reactions to games and stuff and videos. I was wanting to ask what people's thoughts on it were.
I think it's a natural thing that's just come about. I think it's one of those things where you've literally had so many things of tweets and things like creators being feeling like they've been messed over by something that they've said years ago. So naturally, there's gonna be a reaction to that to allow people to actually feel like they actually have ability to chance to talk about and have a platform without the fear of whatever they're saying 20 years down the line suddenly becoming problematic and going, now you're now cancelled. Like a good example is Kevin Hart, who a few years ago, like in the days when gay jokes were very prevalent, I must say, and now suddenly he gets the biggest gig of his life and was actually a game changer in terms of having a prominent man of color be able to have a stage as big as he was going to get for the Oscars. Suddenly get told now you can't do that because of jokes that everyone was kind of making at that time period.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
geez,
mean,
yeah.
just to play devil's advocate, yes, I understand that React channels are an invention simply because of necessity. In lockdown, you don't have the opportunity to go out and create more creative, more adventurous content. But doesn't the increase in the number of React channels kind of demonstrate a lack of creativity? Like, you
Mm.
can't think of anything
Re-
original to produce, therefore, you're reacting to something someone else has already produced. And everyone reacts to things that they see, so really, you're not doing anything.
Sorry, I'm a bit lost. Why are we? Sorry, we're talking about React channels.
I
Or we're
think
talking
we
about
said
V
We
channels.
were talking
VTubers,
about
wasn't it?
YouTubers, we said.
VTubers.
But I mean, I guess what you could do with that is that it's a trend. I see where you got, like, you could, because the React channel was a trend, but so is VTubing. It seems to be a thing that once someone does it, a lot of other people follow in their footsteps. So I can see you could reapply what you've just said to the whole when it comes to other VTubers, which
Conveniently
is
so.
yeah, because obviously there was a select few initially, and then apparently it's growing now. There seems to be a wide demographic. But do you think that's because it's easy because the tools have been set there, or do you think Hazzamaxman that it's just another way to create more new interesting things? Would you say?
I'm all for VTubers, to be perfectly honest. I think it's a very clever idea to give
Hmm.
those less comfortable, less confident creators who aren't as willing to demonstrate or show their face to the public. It gives them a fantastic avenue, and also you do have to be skilled in technology to be able to make an online avatar.
Yeah, you actually have to be able to animate the thing in the first place,
Exactly,
Yeah.
it's
which
quite
is why
impressive.
which is where a lot of these people actually come from, and I think that's what's quite good about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just because I play devil's advocate, it doesn't mean that's actually my opinion. I actually
Oh
think
no no no!
VTubers
I
are
was
quite
just because
interesting.
obviously you were talking about you were talking about React channels initially. I was just wondering if your view was similar or
Similar,
different
yeah.
when it comes to uh, the actual VTubers
Nice train
as
of
opposed to
thought,
React.
host. Nice train of thought.
Yeah, but no, obviously, yeah, things are changing in that regard, and obviously, yeah, VTubers are becoming a great thing. I think I'm kind of in the middle ground with it. Like, I think it's fantastic. I think it's a good way to allow people who are not comfortable um, in their own, what's it, with the, with being, with their actual physical self being put in the public image, the public sight. You know what I mean? However, I do. Would you say that because of the anonymous nature of it, do you think that people would start abusing it and using it for more, saying more, what's the word, edgy or controversial stuff without having ramifications or repercussions? Or do you think it's still going to be as easy to get cancelled by YouTube and stuff like that?
I
I think
can't
it be
see
is
why it would
you'd
be
be
any harder to cancel a VTuber's content than a
Well,
non-VTuber's content. You would still cancel the channel, right? If they made
well,
controversial content.
it's more because it's more whether cancelling you want to cancel the individual that person, and I think that's the thing. That's why it come about. I think it's a reaction to saying one small thing, and suddenly your whole person is thrown into the limelight, and then you're basically cancelled from doing anything because of one slip up. Which I mean, everyone's made something a slip up at some point, but this one has
yeah,
just been seen by thousands of people, and they've decided that yep, you don't have the right to your privacy anymore, and you have you deserve to get death threats and that kind of stuff. And like that's the difference. Is like you can cancel that channel, which is fine. And that yeah, if it's as aggressive as it could be, then yeah, that makes sense. But then you get things like at least their personal life, for example, if they're working or doing other jobs, aren't affected, but they are still punished by the fact that that channel which they spent time and effort growing is now basically dead.
But then, of course, obviously, what I was also referring to is because they're anonymous, then what's to stop them from going, because no one knows my face, and because I can change my accent, or put on an accent, or put on a voice, would it be possible to, like, let that sink ship, let that ship sink, and start a new channel under a new persona, is what I'm suggesting. Is it, because obviously, the sins of the channel, the sins of the person made, the accident slip up can easily be, negated. Or do you think people would,
You still have to
break?
regrow the channel.
Yeah, they'd have to regrow
That's
the
the
channel.
thing. You would have to start from the beginning again.
Yeah,
And I think that's time and effort that they have to put in to be able to get it back.
true.
And I think that if unless they copy and paste it in, at which point they're just going to get the council thing going across to it. I'm just going to share in the chat the image I'm referring to. Like you have, and their own animated personas are able to now get in, and I think that's really been picked up by that kind of area.
Yeah,
And I think you're talking about whether it's going to get cancelled. I think it's really dependent on the group of people who get hold of it. Like
yeah.
at the moment, I think PewDiePie is only really the pure, like the only real mainstream person to have picked it up, and he's probably got some crap about it because like they know his face beforehand before he started the V channel.
Yeah.
And I think that's an issue in itself. It's like how many people are running anime characters as their personas on the VChat,
Nah, that's
and
true.
yet PewDiePie is the one that got called out because they know what it looked like. But I imagine a lot of these other people may also not be, Japanese, may not be what they actually are. Funnily enough, under those anime
Yeah,
skins, and yet they're not getting the same abuse. I'm assuming I haven't seen the abuse. I'm assuming it might like something might be around like cultural appropriation or something like that. That's
yeah,
literally just that's an absolute punt in the dark based on no information.
yeah. But
We're
obviously,
professionals.
yeah. But no, but that what I was referring to more is like obviously PewDiePie's face, so if he gets cancelled, you already know the guy, you already seen his face, so whenever he goes out, whenever he goes about, the stigma or whatever he said will stick with him. Whereas what I'm referring to with people who have kept themselves properly anonymous is that if they've done something wrong, it'll stick to that character, but the character can be swapped out for another character, if you know what I mean. Meaning it's
Yeah.
safer, I would say, but it also, do you think that allows more room for, do you think it gives people a little bit too much room, or do you think it's
No,
something that could
I
be
think
easily
I
improved?
really
that's
think
one.
so.
That's my point. Is that it's a reaction to the this kind of perceived cancel culture. That you say one thing and your whole thing is cancelled, and I think
Yeah,
that's a direct reaction. Is the fact that this gives them that security that their personal life isn't going to be crushed by for them making a minor slip up. Yeah, obviously it becomes an issue if there's like something like if it's an absolute direct kind of racial abuse, but then at the same time though if they wanted to, they have email addresses connected to IP addresses, and
nah,
that
true.
can easily be like YouTube could find there's easy enough ways that those YouTubers can find a way to cancel them or soft block them as they call them, where they just don't get put up in the recommended section anymore. Like I think there's a number of times that's happened. Like people's posts aren't being shown and everyone's going, oh why is that? But they just like we kind of guess you're doing this, but we can't. But there's not enough evidence to say that you are essentially.
Yeah. So yeah, so yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing. I think
YouTube's in
yeah.
a really
Sorry.
interesting place right now, in that now more than ever, a lot of the popular content is changing. So I remember about 5 years ago, popular content was let's plays or funny political commentary videos, whereas now the flavor of the month, as you could call it, on YouTube seems to be VTubers and React channels and you know more creative content, essentially. So YouTube's in a really interesting place right now, especially with the rise of Twitch and Patreon. A lot of YouTubers seem to be moving on to that side of things.
Yeah.
I think the growth of Patreon has definitely allowed people to be more like with less having to do clickbait stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. It's like the people who have got decent Patreon followings, you can see that their reliance on clickbait has gone down, and because they know they're much more stable in terms of being able to get viewership, or be able to get particular views.
Yeah.
I still think though that it's too much of YouTube is still based on corporate. Like if you go and like if you just start going through trending or start a new site through incognito mode, it's always like, I mean, there's less of the Jimmy Fallon chat show which used to happen 5 years ago, but it's still dominated by what corporations have put out, which
Yeah.
just it's lost it. I think that's the one thing that's always annoyed me in the last couple of years. Is like it's no longer just YouTube has now been commercialized and incorporated into the greater thing. So it's now becoming like you're now competing against people those people with bigger pockets, and it's frustrating when YouTube themselves are pushing them because they know they get they know they're always going to be safe and get ad revenue.
Yeah.
So you're literally having to do something like be seen as clean, like Mr. Beast is, to be able to make it as big as you can be.
No, of course. I know what you mean exactly. It's like back in I started watching YouTube back in 2012, and I think the first channel I remember watching was Epic Mealtime,
Oh yeah.
and I used to thoroughly enjoy that. I mean, back then obviously I was a lot younger, and so that kind of content was, for me, was like, oh wow, it's so cool. But honestly, thinking about it now, I don't think if something like that was to I mean, it's still on, it's still alive, it's still going. But if you were to have done that kind of content in the beginning now, I don't think it would last as long, because we are far more, like, the whole world has changed since then. And I think you're right. It's become more corporate, it's become more focused on, money orientated. But it's also become a far more sensitive place because we are all aiming towards, it being easily accessible. Everyone's on the internet now. It's not just a niche site anymore. It's a mainstream thing. It's a mainstream product. A lot of originality and original ideas and original content are being stifled by wants and needs. It's of these corporations, of the people who go, oh yeah, don't say that in your show. Don't do this in your show. Please support our product, but make sure you don't say anything controversial, or else you're gonna disappear. And I guess that's the corporations love well, not love but I'm saying it serves them well, because if someone personally does something wrong, then you could just get rid of them and swap them out for someone who will behave and obey, I suppose. But yeah,
I don't
I know
think
what
it's
you mean.
corporate. I don't think it's corporate. I'll say I won't say it's corporations
Yeah.
who are doing this, because I think that's a bit unfair on them. But I
Yeah.
do think it's a direct that kind of, it is very much like it's now within their interest to do it. It's now
Yeah.
because it's now become a public conscience thing. It's not just a, oh dear, YouTube been overreacting and cancel my stuff. It's now become something part of that what people say that we should be doing anyway. So
Yeah, no, I wasn't blaming corporations for it. I was oh yeah. But I did sound all I was
we are
thinking.
putting this on YouTube after all.
Yeah. I
One
love
thing
you.
I
I
wonder,
love you, YouTube.
one thing I wonder is YouTube considered as social media? Because officially speaking, it is, but personally, I wouldn't count YouTube as social media, mainly
It's a
because
search engine.
I don't really interact with people on YouTube, whereas on social media, I do.
It's 100%. It's 100% a search engine.
Yeah.
Because it is. That's what it is. Because
YouTube
when you go on YouTube, you search videos.
from Jason Mars. YouTube is a thing, 100%.
No, I said.
You can co-opt it, okay? You can co-opt
But sorry.
it.
Anyway, Jason, what were you saying?
It's a search engine, 100% a search engine. All you do on it is search for videos, and the thing is, Google themselves have known that for a long time, which is why I think one of the reasons why they had bought them in the first place was because they knew it was a search engine, and they could bring that technology in to help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think, I think, as you know what, I think the downfall of YouTube began when Google bought out YouTube. I think personally, when I say that, I mean not that it seems to have become more corporate focused rather than back when YouTube before that it seemed to be a lot more free, a lot more.
Well, they had to because they're now it's now like those like those topics that they may or may not want to talk about is now in their domain. So they were talking like how we were talking about how what's it called, like Instagram and Facebook have now come in and tried to are now allowing people to cancel accounts that have racial abuse stuff. That's exactly the same thing. They're now, because it was them on the line. It was them going, oh right, by the way, you're now going to be associated with this.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and that's something that they had to do. So, and the main way that YouTubers make money was through advertising, which only came about because of the influx of Google's money. So you can, it's a catch-22. Like the money, when the money turns up, people will start going, why? Will start questioning about where the morality of some of the things that might be said. Like there's no longer what would you call the free web and stuff like that. It's not.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But
I understand that Google obviously has a reputation of reporting certain individuals would be extraordinarily bad for their business. And I get that, and that's totally legitimate of them. So obviously, if someone spouts bigotry on the internet, perfectly fine to cancel, perfectly fine to get rid of them. But I
do you
mean,
think that's
but
up
it's
to the
like it's
corporation, or do you think it's up to the individuals? Because if the individual say, "Oh, we don't like him anymore," then surely he will be punished anyway. So why are we doing like a double punishment by not only the corporation stepping in, but his or the fan base?
I mean, I think with that, it's not. Hmm. Oh, that's trying to process. Let's say for a moment. With the double punishment
That's
thing, I think it's obviously the corporations tend to do it not because, obviously, as we've discussed previously, corporations don't necessarily care as much as the individual. The individual and users and their fan base do have have an authentic connection. Well, not authentic, but have a connection to their subscribed person. So whether it be PewDiePie, whether it be all of these YouTube personalities. But with the corporation, because obviously they've got a bottom line and they don't want to see as letting this kind of stuff manifest in their own platform, they have to do their own form of punishment because they want to save themselves from whatever controversy that this individual is,
So
spouting.
essentially, you're saying that companies are doing it to save face. That's
I would say that they do it to save face, whereas the people who look up to the YouTuber, they doing it out of either actual feeling, I would suppose. Whether it be justified or not is another question, because sometimes when you see people get completely cancelled and not see, sometimes it feels it's not always the case. Sometimes people get cancelled for good reasons, but then sometimes you see people get cancelled for absolutely no reason, and you're like, hmm. But
I wouldn't say cancelled. I wouldn't say cancelled for absolutely no reason. I think they'll be cancelled because they're. The thing is, I think there'll be an attempt at being cancelled because the thing that was talked about was particularly close to them. However, the problem becomes when the majority and the majority of the viewers go, okay, I like when those people don't really. Well, I'm not saying they care enough about the issue, but when they're like they don't see that point of view, they didn't quite see that context the way they did it. They do, for example, like the whole thing about a good example is the PewDiePie one when he got loads of people on Fiverr to show like how bonkers that website is and how bad Fiverr is, and you can literally pay anyone to do anything. he then gets done because he proves that someone could put up something like a racial statement up on there, up on Fiverr, and you get paid for it, and then there's no problem.
Yeah.
And yet he was the one who got punished, despite showing that another organization was the one allowing that thing to happen. And I think that is so he got cancelled by he actually got cancelled by YouTube because of that, but mainly because that's how big PewDiePie is, and how much he's the face of YouTube. But at the same time, though, his viewers and viewership did not take a hit.
Yeah.
And like you can easily see that the viewers understood the context and didn't care, or not say didn't care, but understood what was being said and why it was happening, whereas the corporation didn't. And you can argue that that's why a lot of people are not necessarily on the backing the kind of cancel culture, because stuff like this happens, like where people get like even James Charles a while back got done for, oh, you cancelled, you did this, you did that, and actually turns out she was in the right, and she was cancelled. She lost loads of subscribers because of what was said. When actually, once all the evidence came out, it was, oh, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
And it's like stuff like that. I mean, like a good example is Dream. He's a speedrunner. He's recently been done for or cancelled because he cheated. Now the jury is still out that whether he did or didn't, but my personal opinion is that he did.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Like the
So
cancel
why is
culture
there a debate-
before allowing him
why is
to
there
rebut.
debate over whether he cheated or not, just for the viewers who don't know what you're talking about?
Because the problem is, as soon it's like the whole thing with Death of the Author. It's as soon as it became so important that people who weren't involved into the fans suddenly became involved and suddenly went, oh wait, he's cheating. And because there was such a major reaction from his very loyal fans saying that's bullshit.
Yeah.
You can easily it got bigger than it should have been, and got other people involved who may not understand the context. But the problem is, like, those loyal fans are not going to necessarily listen to the opposite point of view, because they still like Dream and what he does, rather than accepting the fact that he cheated. Again, that's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Sheesh. I mean, it's weird though, because it's in both those scenarios, it seems to be sort of obviously with the first PewDiePie one you mentioned, it was the corporations, but also the second example was the people, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, and that's why it's so difficult. There is no right way to do this properly. And one of the best lines I remember hearing is, "There's no algorithm for the truth."
Yeah. No, absolutely not. And then I suppose that's hard, because obviously if you've got these two sides, saying, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that, it can get, quite difficult, I imagine.
So let me ask this then. How important do you think controversial content is to the survival of YouTube as an entertainment platform? Because the way that I see it is that if YouTube didn't have any controversial content, i.e., if cancel culture was at its peak, the platform would simply fail and collapse. Mainly because I just can't see.
I don't think it will fail and collapse. I think it will change, and I think people will just move elsewhere to do the same thing. It's the same with a good example. Actually, I'm going to compliment using him. Donald Trump would be a good example. They're not going to discuss his stuff on Twitter and Facebook anymore. He's just going to go to another website where he can. You haven't stopped the problem. You haven't stopped him saying what he says. And his fans, if they are loyal to him, will just follow him elsewhere.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And in which case, you just hide. It's like the whole thing about would you punch a Nazi? It's like, okay, what if you punch a Nazi? The Nazi's not going to open his mouth anymore and stop talking. But then he's gonna go and find a group of people who do agree with him.
Yeah.
And then what you have is a group of Nazis. And the last time you got a group of Nazis all together, bad things happened.
Very bad.
Can we briefly sidetrack on Donald Trump using alternative social media platforms? Could you imagine if Donald Trump had a Patreon? You know, Top Trumps, the Patreon service, and it would just be unfiltered Donald Trump videos, him recorded in a Patreon studio.
Oh god, no, I
Couldn't you
don't want
imagine it? That'd be a great idea. Not for us.
That would
Not
be.
for us. For him, it'd be a great idea.
I mean, I think the thing is, there's plenty of examples where people who were considered controversial gets kicked out and they create their own show and then they keep going. Like Ben Shapiro is the obvious one where he's created his own show after being deemed to well, due to the facts and logic, he got kicked out. But yeah, he's an idiot. But like the whole thing about someone, I think a good example. Sorry, brief sidetrack. He talks about how if the water levels rise, you can just leave your house and sell it. And I'm like, yeah, people want to buy houses that have sunk underwater.
Underwater
Like
house,
stuff like
the new.
yeah, it's like stuff like that. You just go like he tries to base himself in fact and logic so much, but then sometimes you're like, yeah, just shut up. This doesn't make sense. Alex Smith is another one. He's created his own podcast after being kicked out of Fox. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if people like this guy's person's point of view enough, they will follow them.
Yeah.
No matter where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's really, it's like you talk about like YouTube won't be. Again, YouTube would probably then become the search engine that it already is, completely desensitized, and would only really have corporate stuff because that's all really YouTube will trust to be able to upload stuff about having controversial stuff on there. Like there's the whole thing about YouTube Kids, like how you're not allowed to. So, for example, if you like kids theme music or theme tunes from your childhood, you wouldn't be able to put them all into a playlist because they're on what they deem YouTube Kids. So you can't put them into playlists for some reason.
I
Or
always found that strange. So a lot of videos that I watch, I will like minimize the window so that I can watch the video while searching for something else. But if it's deemed a kids content video, you're not allowed to watch it in minimized form. And I always wondered what the logic
yeah,
behind that was. What is inappropriate about watching content in a shortened form? Like, what? I never understood the logic behind that move.
yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of stuff around that. Like they've got YouTube Kids for a reason. So why are they punishing everyone for having when they have YouTube Kids? If it shouldn't be desensitized if they've already got a platform for that.
I understand. Yeah. I understand YouTube Kids. I just don't get. I literally can't.
Oh no, me too. I understand.
Why can't you watch YouTube Kids content in the small mode whilst you're searching for something else? Why can you only watch it full screen and nothing else?
I think that might be just a technical thing.
Yeah, it's
Like,
really
yeah.
strange.
I think it was because YouTube Kids, which is a different website and software, probably don't allow it to ensure that the parents know exactly what is being watched. So they can't just hide it and stuff like that. So when those things got recategorized, they just lost that functionality.
Yeah.
So you can't. So the idea is on YouTube Kids, you can't go like you can't end up being put in a playlist. The first 10 videos look okay, but then as soon as you get to like the 10th video, it's something that's inappropriate.
Yeah. Also,
which is ironic because if you just follow autoplay, by the time you get to around the 16th video from a YouTube Kids video, you'll get to something that's graphically abhorrent.
Yeah.
It takes on average 10 videos for the rating of the video to go from PG-13 to R-rated. And that is just on their autoplay.
For some reason, I feel like you've tested this. This isn't just.
Oh no, this is from someone's TED talk. I can't remember who it is, and I'm probably gonna someone in the comment section is gonna be like, "You ripped this man off." I'm like, "Yes, I did. I'm very sorry."
No, what it's gonna say in the comment section. What it's gonna say in the comment section is Jason Mars reacts to Jason Mars's TED talk.
Yeah.
That's what it's gonna say.
Hi, welcome to thank you for joining my TED talk.
It's oh god. I'm having a look for the chap who did it. James
in the meantime,
Bridle. James Bridle.
Probably.
AKA Jason Mars.
No.
Yeah.
No, James Crable. Yeah,
Yeah, but it was an overall discussion about how YouTube isn't suitable for kids. It's like it's just like you got like 10 videos. You got this, like Mickey Mouse like of this 3 years ago. This is before I think this is before YouTube Kids.
So what? Mickey Mouse
And when stuff like Spider-Man peeing on Elsa using a water bottle was kid stuff, and it was the most popular thing on the kids.
Yeah, that was.
And it's like that kind of stuff, and I think it was in that era. So I don't think that's the case anymore. But it was definitely something that's what happened, was that essentially a playlist would be made with stuff like that. If you just put, and because things, I think the thing was that things are being misbranded as kids, being for kids. So
there was a group that made things that seemed like masqueraded as like kids videos, but they weren't. They were.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they are. I wouldn't even want to categorize them as other than trash. But
I would say it's highly suggestive.
I remember a particular example from like 3 years ago when I was younger, and it was literally one of my like favorite, funniest YouTube videos I'd ever seen. And the video was literally a green Bart Simpson peeing in Homer's mouth from the roof of a building, and this Homer Simpson is green. And now that I think about it, it is arguably kids' content because it's Bart Simpson and Homer Simpson. Typically associated with
well, the
kids.
Simpsons aren't really kids, really.
Yeah, with the nature of the content, not so much.
But even then, like the Simpsons, you wouldn't really consider as a kids program.
Not as much. I mean, another example.
It's not like they're taking Peppa Pig and just made them into bacon.
Yeah.
Which I think someone actually did. So
yeah, I think there's a lot of cartoons that pick that now. Either as memes or as these suggested videos.
Basically, you mean SpongeBob. SpongeBob seems to be the one kids cartoon that seems to be infinitely memeable in every context, in every demographic. Yeah. SpongeBob seems to be a great source of memes.
It's the SpongeBob is
also thinking about this, a lot of people may not be old enough for it, but I remember a show called Happy Treehouse Friends.
Oh wow!
Oh god!
No.
Yep. By the fact that everyone else's reaction, that was essentially, for people who don't know, it was essentially cartoon characters, very kind of kids program, drawn and animated and all that kind of stuff. But what happened in them was essentially absolutely horrific injuries and very graphic, in very graphic details will occur to each of these characters. Yeah. And essentially, what the general plot of it, because these guys never intended it to be made for kids. Now it was very clear from them, and they were talking about how it was essentially, from their point of view, it was making fun of how slapstick some of these programs are, and that if these programs actually happened, what would happen.
Now, Happy Tree Friends started in 1999, and unbelievably, the final episode was in 2016. How did it go on for so long?
Yeah, because
surely they ran out of content after like 5 or 6 seasons. What else was there to make?
I mean, they went. I think they started an animated show. Like they started actually getting things from YouTube and stuff like that. It wasn't just like. But that stuff's been taken off. That stuff's been taken down. But it was just one of those things where it was actually. I remember that for some point of time, it was actually funny because it was one of those things where it would show the other side of like slapstick, like some of these things that we always got shows like, oh, this is like we know which wasn't real, and it just took the piss. Like sometimes the amount of slapstick that these cartoons can get away with. It was a kind of proof of point. So like, oh yeah, this is what we're suggesting is happening to these favorite animated cartoons, and we're saying these are for kids. So this is what would actually happen.
What is the age rating for Happy Tree Friends? Because I remember watching it in primary school when a fellow podcast member of mine, Hero Nero, also watched it, and he was the one that introduced it to me whilst I was in primary school. So I really don't know what the age rating is for it.
I don't think
they got age ratings because it's mainly on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's another thing. There's no age ratings on YouTube.
Yeah. I would say like if it unfortunately because it's on YouTube, it doesn't have the proper. I mean, unfortunately, but fortunately, uh,
I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Let's put it that way.
it is a double-edged sword because it's it seems like common sense that it's not for kids, but at the same time, I feel like you have to start restricting stuff like that. It's kind of hard because you don't. It seems like anyone can get on the internet nowadays, and anyone can see anything that they want, or some people can see things that are not meant to because it's, as you said earlier, that whole deviating from what is kids' content on the autoplay.
Okay,
It's
question for
it's
both of
controversial.
you. If
Mm-hmm.
you happened to have children in the future,
Yep.
right, and so they grow up in a technologically dominated era, would
Mhm.
you restrict them to age-rated content in line with their actual age, or would you let them explore freely, but just with restrictions on obviously over 18 stuff like pornography
I
and
think that's
nudity and
difficult.
all that?
I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult because it is a kid by kid basis.
Yeah,
Like I know I would have been able to be. I know my parents are very much happier with me to watch older stuff because I generally understood that it wasn't real or either did that separation. Whereas my sister, and she even I think even she admitted it as much. She watched one horror film and got scared to death of it. Whereas I was a bit more kind of I know it's on the screen and I'm not that bad, but
yeah,
and just stuff like that. Like it is very much individual based.
yeah,
And furthermore, it's really dependent. Like if I'm on, I would definitely not class. I would definitely not be happy with kids having free reign on YouTube
definitely. No.
if at a young age because it is full of stuff that either they won't understand, not because it's like, but just because the context is needed. Like they just don't have that context to understand either the jokes or
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff.
Now, with
Or
my
it's
parents, they took the opposite approach. So, in my childhood, I was only allowed to watch age appropriate content. So, that's why, for example, I've never seen South Park, I've never seen the Saw movies, I've never seen Family Guy, and the reason is
Mm-hmm.
because when these movies were particularly popular, I was either in secondary school or in the latter stages of primary school, meaning it wasn't age appropriate content. And I honestly don't think that's such a bad way to go. Yes, I've missed out
Yeah,
on a lot of social culture, and I don't really have that much understanding of pop culture because I'm kind of catching up for like 10 plus
mm,
years of pop culture that I missed because I wasn't age
yeah.
appropriate at the time. But I honestly
Mm.
don't think it's such a bad way to go, apart from the
I
not understanding a lot of pop culture
I
references.
but I think that's the thing is like you just need to keep an eye on it. Like for example, I think when I was 14, I was allowed to play like Grand Theft Auto,
mm,
Again, same
and
here.
stuff like that because it's one of those things where it's like if a lot of people are already playing on it, and the fact that they knew I was tech savvy enough to be able to get it on YouTube if I wanted to, essentially the stuff that I was going to be seeing on um on Grand Theft Auto, I wouldn't be able to. I'll be able to get it wherever, essentially. So it was kind of like they were like, "Ho hum, we'll let you have it," but then we'll keep. But then they were able to keep an eye on what I was actually doing on there.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
But there's always that kind of stuff. Like I think by the time when you get to 13, 14, like it would be okay. Let's have a bit more freedom.
yeah,
But I think that's the point. It's like you're asking whether you keep kids, and the question is, where do you find someone that's mentally grown up to be able to understand what's going on?
yeah. It's
And
hard to.
it's like
It's
it's
one of those
one of
places, isn't
those,
it? Yeah.
yeah. Like for example, my parents knew when I was 13, 14, I would be able to deal with the themes.
Mm-hmm.
Where and like I mean that's one thing I probably would like to go through is Grand Theft Auto now because I think I'd have a better understanding of it.
Yeah,
Because I don't think I actually understood it properly because I was playing this is Grand Theft Auto 4, where it was a little bit more grounded. So,
yeah,
but yeah, it's stuff like that. It's very much you have to play it by ear, but at the same time, I think around 13, 14, you got to let them kind of have a little bit more freedom.
yeah. See, in terms of my upbringing, though, I would say like I am in a similar vein to Hazzamaxman, in that I was only allowed to play. So when I was 12, I could play 12 games. When I was 15, I could play 15 games. When I was 18, I could play 18 games. But in terms of my early interactions with the internet, obviously I only started getting into YouTube in 2012. So I would say I was at a reasonable age to do that kind of stuff. Because they were like, they trusted me with the internet, and they taught me how, they basically educated me saying, look, there's all sorts of people online, you have to be careful of certain content, and I was, reasonably educated about the kind of dangers of the internet, so I was always mindful at that age, and that's the thing, if you have a good relationship with your parents, and you understand the whole, like, if they give you the chance to, like, go, well, there's this kind of stuff, but you have to be careful of that, and they properly educate you on it, then I think it could work. But as I said, it's a kid-by-kid basis. Obviously, before YouTube, I was mostly on Lego.com, so it was great.
What's Lego.com? What the hell is that?
Okay, back in 2006, this is how far, there was like a kids website where it was Lego.com, and so it was just a place where you can have games and, like Lego-based games.
Oh,
so like Miniclip and stuff?
Yeah, I remember using Miniclip and Club Penguin.
Yeah, I never used Club Penguin, but Miniclip, I know I was familiar with Miniclip, but I was also very familiar with Lego.com. And so, as a kid, I think if kids were on like websites like I don't know if there's a modern equivalent of Lego.com, because I know now it's become more commercial. But there used to be websites where it was like Cartoon Network website where you could go and play games
you
based
play
on...
with the...
Yeah, and I think that's perfect, because those kind of websites are perfect, because unlike YouTube, where anyone from anywhere can publish content, with Cartoon Network it tends to be Ed, Ed and Eddie. You know what I mean? It's that kind of those games that were from shows you watched.
And that was generally the thing. It was like you. The most I remember when I was growing up, it wasn't like you. Most of the time, I'd go like to the Disney website, where you play the games based on the stuff that you've just seen.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was kind of this thing that it was a natural thing. I think the thing is now is like you get so many people just generating their own games, as for sake of viruses. But then the point is, if you just went to these websites, that was it.
Like, do you guys remember back then, around the 2005 period onwards, where McDonald's used to give you a free CD-ROM game with every Happy Meal purchase?
I remember that, but I didn't. The only closest thing I got to CD-ROM games was from cereal boxes. We had the Frosty. It was the Frosty's football game.
My parents would literally buy McDonald's Happy Meals just so I could collect the CD-ROM games and get lots of games for our family PC. Even though I didn't really eat that many Happy Meals, mainly because a lot of them weren't, a lot of them I wasn't really able to eat. But yeah.
So, for example, I'll give you a couple. So, my parents I used to have Frosties when I was growing up. So they had the Kellogg's Frosties great, like because the whole is like they're great. They got the Grand Prix, which came out in 2003. So it was an actually fully fledged Formula One game that you could get in a Frosties cereal. You then also got a thing called the Frosties Football Frenzy, where they released these games, and these are things. These are not poor quality games. These are like if you think about 2002 standards of football game, they're not actually that far behind what we would expect like at the time, the kind of gaming quality that we would have. So and it's like this is the thing that they were doing this on top of a cereal because they thought the advertising would be to get what they'll get from people buying it because we're like, oh, you get a free game with it.
Yeah. No, that would have been. I mean, that was. I never had one of those myself, but
I'll pop the. I've just found the game. Gameplay, and I'll stick it into the chat. But it was literally one of those things where it's like, I used to play that game a lot, and my parents bought cereal because there were multiple discs for it. That was the trick. You had to have multiple discs, and so you can only get those other discs if you had those cereal. And so the idea is that you would just start collecting all these different cereals. I think it worked back to Formula One because you could have different tracks and stuff like that. So it was a little bit more You could like it was a bit easier to segregate them out. But
Yeah.
there's stuff like he was like, what the fuck? It's just weird. Like this is just weird. Like you think about back then, like imagine going up to Frosty's. And that was the thing though. Fast food restaurants are also doing like building video games. So it's not like it's like you had the.
Have you heard the recent stuff? I mean, have you heard that
no.
KFC's releasing their own console?
Oh
Yes.
yes.
Now that's a topic I want to get into.
What the hell? I mean, it just goes. It's like the latest thing in the KFC. What the hell advertising plan? Like they bankrolled.
What this KFC
They bankrolled
console is the
a.
next step in childhood obesity. It's childhood obesity Mark II. It's terrible.
What was it?
It's a really
they
terrible
bankrolled.
idea.
Yeah.
A games console that helps you make fried chicken and helps you store your stuff in one convenient
No.
location.
It's a chicken warmer, so you don't actually cook them there. You just put them in there to keep them warm.
Yeah.
But what you know what stupid is? What's the biggest thing that we all have that we hate as when you're on a console? Things overheating. Yeah, let's put something that keeps. It's like they also made a TV series advertising KFC and having there's a Hallmark. I think it's a Hallmark KFC game, like the Colonel, like the chef turns up and starts cooking his chicken, and the woman is betrothed to someone else but chooses to fall in love with him, and he turns out to be a Colonel, so it's all okay in the end.
I mean, I heard about the visual novel, but I didn't hear about the.
Yeah, this is my point. Is I think they misunderstood being a meme for actual advertising.
They did it right.
Now, I will be the first one to admit, no shame, and I genuinely mean this, no shame. I've played the Colonel Sanders dating simulator when it came out on Steam, and it was amazing. It was the most amazing dating simulator, even though it's the only one I've played. It was top notch.
It was the best gaming simulator I played. It's also the only one I played. You're embarrassed to show off.
It was a great game. It genuinely made me consider buying a gaming PC just because of how good the dating simulator was. It was top notch.
That's a bit left field, isn't it?
No, out of all the things.
It had some great content in it. It had a bit of surprise.
Let me put it this way: if your thought was to buy from buying that game was to buy a gaming laptop, I think their marketing has failed there.
I think no, that's why they're releasing the game console so they can market the game for the console. Like that's the
launch title.
If you want the sequel to the game, you have to buy the KFC console. It's exclusive.
Oh my god!
Genuinely, the Colonel dating simulator is good. It's actually really good.
The Colonel will see you now.
It's funny. It's genuinely funny. That's the thing. That's what makes it so good.
Yeah.
That's the thing, though. I think that's the thing. I think KFC, like, these things are funny. Like they look like they look. The thing is, if you're trying to be a serious company, it's not a good thing because it just makes it look like you're out of touch. But it's really great for like meme material. But that's the problem. It's meme material.
I mean,
there's a reason why those advertising strategies have not been used in any other region that the KFC are in. Like, they're not used in the Japan area, for example, where you would think if you're releasing a game console that might work there, but it wasn't. They haven't used that strategy.
I mean, yeah. I mean, taking account of the culture, yeah, it would. Yeah, I think it's weird. I'm just like thinking about the fact that they released a game console and all their marketing tactics. I mean, it is. I don't know. I have no words. It's just amazing, but dumb.
There seems to be more obvious areas that KFC could diversify in. So, a lot of people are currently into healthy fast food and getting into shape and living a healthy lifestyle, mind and body. So you would think the obvious decision for KFC would be to make a healthier alternative menu. So there's the regular KFC menu.
No, I'm sorry. That's not going to happen at KFC.
No.
I mean, they have
That's
done
not
it.
going to happen.
It's fried
That's not
chicken.
that's not going that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen at any fast food restaurant. Because if you're going to actually pay for that healthy stuff, you just go somewhere else. You go to a
could
Pret a
literally go
Manger
to
or
s-
so. Literally,
Yeah.
just go to a small Tesco's and buy a sandwich.
No, but
Or you
you'd
could
people
just
want
don't
it
make it
do that.
yourself.
cheaper. You'd want it cheaper.
Yeah.
Maybe you want fast food, but you just don't want it to be as unhealthy as it is. So it's not like
You know that's called Subway, right?
a healthier
Yeah.
option. I've seen McDonald's do it, for example.
I mean, with
What, in their
very
Happy Meals?
novel-
I mean, they're in their Happy Meals, sure, but not in their.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done it in their Happy Meals, but not in like your normal side. You don't go like when you get a meal, you don't get a choice of do you want chips with that or an apple or apple slices. You don't get that choice. You just get given chips.
Yeah.
The only place they've been healthier was actually when they were with kids because they were being done for child obesity when the child has no choice over what they actually eat. So that's the point where they were trying to
I've
make
just
on
looked
there.
at the McDonald's menu, and yes, there is a subsection for mains under 600 calories. So you can get the
Yeah,
McChicken sandwich
but-
meal, but it's with a
I
watermelon salad.
I mean, under 600 calories is not exactly it's a very high bar to be under.
Yeah.
I mean, still,
I mean, you also have to
still.
take into consideration like the statistics of war sport.
Oh,
I
here
don't
we
think
go.
people
Here
go
we go.
to
The
McDonald's
crispy
for
chicken-
salad. You
The
know.
crispy chicken
Yeah.
salad meal.
I think it's down to that marketing. It's literally like you don't people know what they're going to get at KFC. Like you have to. Oh, that's the thing. If you improve the quality, I mean, in the UK, the KFC UK, it's actually decent.
It's
Like
good. Yeah,
it's not too
great.
greasy. It's very good. But this is the point that this is what they were getting annoyed about in the US was that they're spending all this money on these gimmicky marketing schemes, and yet the quality of some of the restaurants and some of the quality of service hasn't improved. And it's just general stuff like that. You go, what the hell happened? Like, surely that'd be one of the things you should focus on.
Like one
Yeah.
time,
Rather than these gimmicks.
I went to a KFC in London, and it genuinely looked like a proper restaurant. Like it had like paintings, and the walls were decorated, and they had like these fancy chairs and everything. And I'm like, is this a KFC or is this an actual sit-down restaurant? I can't tell.
I mean, there are
We're talking about KFC London as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you're going to
It was
catch
only
people
this
wanting
one
to have a
branch, though.
sit-down
It was
meal.
only this one specific branch that I've been to.
Yeah,
It's not like
but
any of the others like that.
I mean, to be fair, there's always those one or two branches of some locations where they put a big effort into how it looked
Yeah.
or how
Or
it
even
was
the
designed
menu.
because
Because I think there was two McDonald's restaurants. There's one in New York which put its emphasis on quality. So you can build your own burger. You get jalapenos, fresh jalapenos. You get like they do their own ice cream sundae, like proper, like not just like oh yeah that cone you get or the McFlurry you get. I mean like a proper sundae. And I also know that in the Florida
Yeah, I found the
McDonald's
one
they
you're
did
talking
pizza.
about.
They did pizza.
I
The
found
dudes
the
did
one
pizza.
you're talking about inside New York City's
Yeah.
fancy McDonald's with a concierge and a French pastry station. What?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No, there are places in different parts of the world.
yeah, but they'll be like your specials. Like you
Yeah.
don't really consider them part of the main thing.
Yeah,
So-
you go there as an experience, not as a main day thing.
And I think that's the thing though. Is like you think about when you're if you ever have worked around London, you know that we're always within at least 30 steps of the Pret a Manger.
True.
If you're
yes.
working in London, like literally,
That-
so if
that's
you,
one
if you want healthy food, it's already out there, and that's the thing. Like you got stuff like the cost of coffees and coffee shops also offer healthy alternative, and that's the
Yeah.
thing. Like it's not KFC's thing about marketing, like trying to be healthier. I mean, they could do ways like they can make vegan chicken or whatever, then they'll do a vegan version of their food.
I've actually tried vegan chicken.
Which
it's actually kind of nice. It's nicer
Oh
than
yeah,
you'd
it's
expect.
come along.
Like I wouldn't choose it, but if I had to
Yeah.
have it, I wouldn't be disappointed.
Oh yeah, I think that's the thing. Is like literally like those like vegan alternatives are actually getting like really quite good. Like I remember someone accidentally like I had ordered a normal sauce roll and I was given a vegan one. Like it took me a while to realize. Like it is that kind of thing, and actually you think about actually that's not that's actually quite a good thing. Like
I've heard
the fact that I'm not going to be bloody Piers Morgan who goes, this isn't blah blah blah. I'm like, well, you're not. You don't have to buy it then.
I mean,
Yeah,
Piers
it's quite a
Morgan
normal one.
is a ridiculous journalist. He's a journalist that thrives on making something out of nothing. He will overinflate things on purpose, and then when he's forced to retreat into a corner, he'll apologize and be like, "Yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have blown it up to this extent." Well, then
I mean,
stop
he's
being
not usually one for apologizing though.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
I think he's a controversial person because he is stout. He has very stout views. But I mean, he's like if you think about like in the US, he was mild. Like, and this is the thing. Like, you can easily like he didn't make it in the US because he wasn't controversial enough.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, he is actually when he's given something serious, he can like make legit points. But you can easily like I almost wonder like if he's forced to be controversial because he's just not getting the views anymore.
I think it is that whole controversial for views, which is, I think because obviously, despite obviously cancel culture as it currently stands, there is that element of we do like to watch a good car crash. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, even if it's in slow motion, it's horrific. Like
Today's
we can't
word
just
of
look.
the
We can't.
podcast, controversial. There you go, viewers.
Yeah.
Controversial.
But then also the same thing is like you like some of Piers Morgan stuff like oh he's been controversial again. Half the time you go, was it that controversial?
Yeah.
Like and I think that's the thing is like some of the stuff people come out and say oh this is controversial and you go is it though? I mean like
Yeah.
they do
It's not
it's like for example some of the stuff that comes out you go okay there's actually a position to debate here like whether I think there was one thing they're talking about whether I think the thing was very poorly phrased like it was like essentially something like transgender women aren't women but the general consensus was okay do they have a right do they have the ability to talk about women's issues if they don't experience them when growing up same way that men are told they can't talk about it because they don't have the same experiences like it's like those kind of like I mean it's those kind of discussions like is that whether certain people have the insight or ability to be able to talk about those issues but then at the same time though it's like my general opinion is if a doctor says she's a woman that's it
Yeah.
like like I don't care whether they are true women or not like that's a bit bullshit like,
Yeah, my
it's up there with you're pure blooded because you got blonde hair and blue eyes and
yeah it follows the whole kind of weird side if you think that there's such thing as pure it's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, my opinion briefly on that topic is that like for example men should be able to talk about women's issues and vice versa. It's just that their opinion naturally won't be worth as much as the other. So, for example, a man's opinion on a woman's issue, fine, isn't worth as much, I understand, because they're not experiencing it. But they still should be able to make an opinion on it. They should be able to provide an option.
But obviously,
because the thing is, you have to work. I think there's the idea that you have to work. Like if you're looking for a solution, you have to have both sides kind of insight on it. Because you shouldn't have a solution purely based on one side's point of view.
yeah.
Like for example, there should be the idea that you should be like if you're making a solution to a problem that everyone kind of gets a consensus. And I think that's something that hasn't happened. I think in the particularly if you're thinking like stuff like that's trying to empower transgender people, like the ability for them to pick which toilet they use based on how they identify as gender, then blurs into the security that women feel that they want to have. They don't want people who look like men being able to walk in on them getting changed in the changing room.
Yeah.
And the idea that you allowing men just be able to go, did you just assume my gender? And then they're kind of fucked because they can't say you either basically out them and say you can basically turn the conversation as like oh you've just been transphobic, or rather and whereas you're enabling an absolute creep allowing an absolute creep to allow in. And the problem is that people might go well it doesn't happen very often. The problem is it doesn't take much for a fucking creep to get in. Like the number of times people actually do that horrific kind of stuff is low, but you're still enabling him to do it. It's like
it's that.
Can we briefly marvel at something for a second? Let's just briefly appreciate the fact that the conversation has just jumped from fancy McDonald's to transgender issues. That's an impressive jump. I mean, we should pat ourselves on the back for that. That is
just call it just call us Jonathan Edwards. We just hop, skip, and jump that.
Oh God! No.
Wow.
This is the episode where the podcast self-combusts. This is going to be the most popular episode of the podcast, and it'll be destroyed at the same time.
To be honest with you, we haven't said anything. I don't think anything that's too controversial about the issues.
Realistically, we haven't. No, I was just exaggerating for comedic effect. Or
But also, like,
oh, that's dangerous. That's controversial.
A comedic effect.
No comedic effect on this podcast. We hate comedy.
No comedy. No comedy allowed.
Comedy. Or like no, I haven't got him.
Comedy deserves the spank. See you later, comedy.
I love how like we didn't employ any good funny techniques during that whole thing to emphasize the point we don't have comedy in this.
We tried our best. We tried really hard to find comedy.
We tried not to be funny.
Oh, wink.
But also be funny.
Let's just start.
Anyway, going back onto stuff. Onto something
Onto stuff.
Talking about
onto
stuff.
stuff.
It's the let's move away from politics now.
Yeah, I'm gonna do so. We'll do something. We'll do something that you can discuss about, but also, less political. Probably, something I wanted to talk about early, like a couple of weeks ago, was I don't know if we actually ended up discussing about it in the end, which was the synthetic meat that they're deciding to grow.
We did not end up talking about that. I remember doing some research to talk about that, and it never materialized.
Yeah, so Singapore is the first country to greenlight a brand of synthetic meat. So what I mean by synthetic meat is that they take a cell from an animal. They take a cell from a chicken in this case, because they are approved chicken, these specialized chicken nuggets, and they grow from this cell. They grow chicken mincemeat, and from that they then make chicken nuggets. So it allows for this whole slaughter-free meat, and obviously it means that no animals are harmed or hurt or killed in the process. It allows for greater production rates. It also allows the meat to be verified, cleaned, and housed, and properly treated in such a way so that there's no disease or any kind of issues with the meat. But I was wondering just hearing, your takes on the subject, obviously. Wondering how you would think of it.
So, my initial thoughts on the subject is if it can become mass-produced and be elevated to a wide-scale, widely accepted product, it seems like a good option for customers to have. Because one of the biggest arguments for going vegan by vegans is they are concerned about the harm caused to animals by non-vegans indirectly by purchasing the food. So if more people are purchasing food that doesn't require animals to be killed for it, well then it'll be doing less harm to the animals than ever before. And
But then here's a question: would you count it as vegan, as it's still technically made of meat initially?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it counts as vegan. I don't think it would count as vegan, but it would employ their sort of logic. So meat eaters who are starting to feel concerned about the cruelty of the animals may prefer this as an alternative. And apparently the scientist who produced the first synthetically produced burger claims that you could make them for $10 a piece, assuming that the technology has upscaled to that level. Big assumption to make.
Do you think? But, do you think that's an issue at the moment? Is that it's actually the price of having to make it? Because you're now basically making I can get a burger for £1.99 right now if I wanted to from McDonald's, and whether that by you're gonna make it about synthetic meat only being available to rich, but then that probably comes down with the economy of scale and stuff like that.
Yeah, especially if they start producing it as well, because
the question is, I don't know much about how it's produced, and that's going to be the issue. It's like whether we're trading one evil for another.
Yeah, with the process so far, all I know is that they basically just take a cell. So it could be a feather, it could be stuff like that. When it comes to chickens and stuff, and they take the cells and obviously just grow it, so they can completely pacify. They do it for pasteurize. That's it. With milk, like how they do with milk. So, like any disease, any bacteria that would be normally associated with put in chicken could be monitored or checked, or wiped out if the case may arise for it too. It just seems to me that they take the cell and then they put it in a petri dish and then they grow it.
Yeah, that's essentially it. So what they're doing is they're taking a few satellite cells. So these are the precursors, and you obtain them from samples of animals. So you take a sample of muscle from animals, and then from that, the satellite cells in there are then put in a petri dish full of nutrients, and then they're just allowed to grow and proliferate over a number of days. And once the culture reaches a certain point, that's when you can start taking samples from the culture, from the petri dish, and subsequently stretching it, exercising and twisting it, and you're using a mechanical process to exercise the fibers.
I see.
So it's essentially like any cell culture. So, for example, when you prescribe antibiotics to a patient, you want to find out whether the bacteria causing the disease is susceptible to any antibiotic. So you take a sample from a patient, you put in a petri dish, and then you expose that dish to that antibiotic, and you see that if the bacteria dies or not. It's essentially a similar sort of process here in growing the meat.
I see. But would you say that, like, you seem, with this kind of process, it's about the mass production of it? And obviously, if you increase the manufacture, the rate at which you produce said product, it would become cheaper. But would you see with a process like this? I think it could. But would you say, from what you understand of it, Hazzamaxman, would you say that it could be mass produced, or do you think it's more limited?
I don't see how it can be mass produced, because when it was first produced in 2013, it cost approximately $300,000 to make, and that was one burger over 2 years.
But obviously, once you
but then that's the point. It's economy of scale. Like the more people want, the more they buy, the more the cost of producing comes down, the more the cost of production comes down, the more investment you get into technology, the more the technology increases to enable that to happen. It's there's a whole thing, a whole school of economics around that idea that, of course, once you get big enough, you have the advantage of being able to get stuff, but do stuff cheaper, and that's exactly what's happened. Like, for example, you said earlier that the last burger could be made for $10.
Well,
and
so you
think about it.
The scientist claims that there's a potential for it to cost $10. So no.
Okay, but then that's the point. It's like that's the scale. That's the scale that we're gonna get down to, because that's what happens. Like, that's the same with any kind of technology. The first couple of cars probably cost like half a grand or £1,000,000 in today's money, but now we can buy one for £4,000 if we wanted to. It's a matter of, once the technology becomes more available, people understand the technology, becomes more widespread, more innovations come from it, because more people who want to chase the money get involved in that industry, and it will come. It's literally, it's one of those things where
specifically that production of this specifically is very technically demanding, because you need a huge bioreactor, which is essentially a high-tech vat that will create and maintain the conditions for growth of the cells, and then you need people to operate it. People have had training in operating it, and then you're paying for overhead costs and for.
Again, I'm sorry, but that's the same with any kind of tech. Like, you could talk the same thing about how 3D printers came about. You had the same condition, like same discussion there. The only difference is when, if enough people want synthetic burgers to become a thing, and enough countries get behind it, which is actually, to be honest, really,
the biggest challenge.
The one reason why I'm in favor of it is because one of the biggest contributors to CO2 is agriculture, by far.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things where,
cows are known to have a huge carbon footprint.
Yeah, because they produce methane when they fart, and I think it's like nearly a third of the US greenhouse gases emissions or contribution to global warming is due to cows.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that that needs to be not necessarily discussed because you need to feed people somehow. But if you introduce and get the public perception that synthetic meat is okay, which starts with vegan meats, if I'm being honest, which is why I've kind of gone like I'm actually all for it because you start allowing the people to accept meat that isn't necessarily from a cow. And as
Yeah.
soon as as soon as that concept changes to allow people to be like a bit more open about that idea, then this synthetic meat can come in. I mean, there's already been a couple videos, and it's all getting a little bit more widespread, and it's getting the kind of the groundwork of that kind of people acknowledging its existence is now
Yeah.
getting there. I think I think there was even a Jeremy Clarkson came on and did a whole thing and said he actually he tasted it, it was really good when he went to
Yeah.
do the synthetic meat. Like, so it's not it's becoming big enough for people like who have significant fan bases to get involved and start making people aware of it. So
Yeah.
it's on that route, and I think it's one of the key ways to reduce CO2 emissions. The question is whether you can get countries that whether it would help whether people from the poorer countries will end up having cow meat that is not very well looked after because people they money is elsewhere,
Yeah.
and that's something that will come about but needs to be avoided.
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. Obviously, the more people invest in it, apparently one of the companies is working with SpaceX. So obviously with the whole mission to Mars thing, obviously they need some supplies, some rations and stuff. So they've obviously signed up with SpaceX. I believe. Give me a second if I can find the name of them.
Okay,
Oh yeah,
Jason,
12.
we have to
Yeah,
stall.
12.
Let's stall. While he's researching, we need to stall our viewers. Elevator music, huh? That's a real thing.
Warning, increase speed, stalling, increase
I actually
speed,
tried
increase
suggesting
speed,
this. So,
warning, low terrain, low
pre-COVID,
terrain.
I was in an elevator with 30 people in it in total. So we were rammed like sardines in this elevator. And because there were so many people in it, things were tense and awkward. And to break the ice, knowing me, you guys wouldn't be surprised that I had to make a joke. I involuntarily, my body literally wouldn't let me not make a joke to try break the tension. And so I was like, what if we had some customizable elevator music? It would make the ride a little more enjoyable. And then I started to think about it more and more. And I was like, wouldn't that help if you had an elevator where you could put on music of your own choice? So, like, you could put on generic classical music in the elevator. It would make the ride a little less awkward.
Pretty good actually.
I have many questions about that idea.
Okay, go ahead. We're stalling. We might as well
Oh man, where do I start? Okay, first of all, I mean technically there is already customizable music because elevator music had to be put in there by the institution in the first place, so they've chosen that music for
Yeah,
a
but it
reason and
seems to be
because
set. Like
that's what
we
it's doing.
don't have the ability to
And
customize it.
right, and okay, then hear me out. You're then creating how long is your elevator trip for it to be regarded to have an elevator for them to be able to choose your own elevator music.
Well,
If
the
you're going up
trip that I
maybe
had
a
to
couple
do.
floors, it's about five. It should be about 10-15 seconds for that to happen. Then thirdly, if there's more than one person, imagine trying to convince everyone to listen to your type of music. And I mean that's the same with me. Like any type of music, like trying to convince 15 people to all listen to the same music for a 15-second trip.
Yeah,
That's going to cause some
so
arguments in the same lift.
the thing was is that is on
Yeah.
my elevator, it was a trip up 24 floors. So I was on the ground floor and I had to go to 24, and most of the people there had to go to 24 as well. So the trip lasts about, I'd say, like 5 minutes upwards, particularly because if you're going up 24 floors, you're likely to stop at a lot of those floors as well, and people are then likely to come in and get out, and that adds time
Right,
to
but
your
what if they don't like your
devices.
music?
In terms of the music issue, I wasn't thinking of putting on music that I would listen to because I don't even like music. But what I was thinking of was putting on, some sort of instrumental, just something to drown out the silence. essentially. I
You
wasn't
do
too sure
know
about the
that's what
specific.
you do know that's what elevator music is for.
Sorry, what?
That cheery.
Alright, so
That music.
so going
Oh,
back on track because
Carry
I
on, go
found
back
it
on
was
track.
just
Stolen
just the company was called Just,
Okay.
Just
as in like Eat Just
just
Inc. Eat Just Inc.
just
Okay.
That is
just
what it's
eat.
called. See, not just eat, eat just.
We are not sponsored by Just Eat. We have no affiliation with Just Eat. Please do not reference
I mean,
any Just Eat related.
Don't mind if you do. If you want to, that's totally fine. But like,
Yeah,
just let us know,
imagine
yeah?
the Just Eat
Oh, I
advert.
wouldn't want Snoop Dogg. I wouldn't want Snoop Dogg coming at me.
Yeah, literally. Could you imagine
Just
that?
don't want people.
Snoop Dogg's like fried rice. Did somebody say just eat fried chicken wings? And you're like, Snoop, come on. I'm trying to order some food. Can you stop rapping about it? Come on, man.
Out of all the people.
I'll still be more amazed that Snoop Dogg was next to me and be like, oh my god, hi.
You're like, hey, Snoop.
Yeah.
Would you ask
Dog,
him
how's it going?
Snoop Dogg?
Dog, what's up?
Like,
Dog.
if I saw Snoop Dogg, the first thing I would ask him is, what was up with the whole lion thing? How do you go from dog to lion? You went from dog to cat, man. What was up with that?
Change your brand, man. It just works.
Yeah, but it's a
sometimes.
bad change of brand. Why would you want to be Snoop Lion? Snoop Dogg is cool. Why would you want to be Snoop Lion ever?
I guess it. We can't get inside the minds of Snoop Dogg. That's
Oh, no one
psychoanalysis
can.
for
No one
another
can.
day.
That's
But
impossible.
Well, no, it's the idea he wants to differentiate himself. Like the Snoop Dogg is all about hip hop, and Snoop Lion is basically a different type of music. I mean, that's not. It's just differentiating between the two. If he does hip hop, he's Snoop Dogg.
yeah,
That's not something to get annoyed about. That's just him trying to differentiate himself between the two.
yeah. Like
He's not like people when people don't see him. He's not gonna be like, don't call me Snoop Dogg. I'm Snoop Lion.
yeah. It's like
Well, I mean, also he'd probably be high as a kite, so he probably wouldn't give a shit. Anyway.
but yeah, no. Another example of that would be I don't know if people are familiar with Filthy Frank, but you know how he did.
You remember we were talking about council.
Became Joji. It's that.
You know we were talking about cancel culture.
Yeah. I mean,
My God.
honestly, I get it because obviously his channel was in the description was always meant to be satire, and it was very clearly satire. But I'm honestly surprised, not from a I think you should have, but I think it's just like people nowadays.
Do you not realise that people tried to get him cancelled after they
No,
realised that he was Filthy Frank?
No, but like when he was doing it, like he was doing it up until the point, like just at the point where I think like after the point where things started going, down that path. So I thought during that period he'd be the first to be shot, but like he wasn't. And then I get like after he became Joji, and then things went further in with that. I thought, oh yeah, I mean, people started discovering that he was, this other guy who was Filthy Frank was far more controversial, but it took a surprising amount of time. I thought it would have been way more quicker than what it was. And even then, they weren't super successful. It was like this half, I don't know. I was just surprised by it. I thought out of everyone.
Yeah, you would have thought it would have come up like straight away, but like how he only took them to like this time, like about May last year, for them to go, wait, he's Filthy Frank? Oh my God, that's so controversial. Blah blah blah. It's like, oh my God, it's just so funny. Like, and then, but here's the thing, he hasn't really got too much. It's like, he hasn't really affected him too much, really. And I think that's the thing is that again, like that's where the difference between like how people like, for example, people who didn't know him about this got brought in under different context. May have gone, oh right, yeah, that's not very, that's not very Hiram. But then at the same time, that people who had known him before, known him for a long time, would just go, yeah. But he's also set the context out that it's all supposed to be a piss take and everything's there the piss take.
Yeah.
But then it's like, Yeah, but that's the thing. That's why context is key. And like sometimes and like we were talking about earlier about how like you sort of like offending someone. I could use like offensive language, but still imply that they're less than human and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I like I'm gonna use some offensive language for gay people just to prove a point. Like, it's like, oh, I had a really good time with those. Well, I think it's like the F word that was used in the example. And
Yeah.
oh, they were so great. They were so fun. Oh, I can't wait to meet them again. It's like, yes, he used the offensive word and probably should be told, hey mate, that's offensive. And he'd be like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I didn't really mean that. But you could have said, oh man, those homosexuals are the worst. Like you're still use the right nomenclature, but it's about that context of how it was used, and I think that's what a lot of the argument gets annoyed of. Again, like with the context in terms of Filthy Frank.
Yeah. I mean,
My
he
God,
went
like
the
he
whole
set that
nine
context
yards.
out properly, and went, yeah, this is just everything he says. Like this is all a big piss take.
Yeah. He didn't put it in his theme description, but he did put it in his channel description because obviously, but still, he did outline it that he was a channel that was, aspiring to be what you shouldn't be.
Basically aspiring
Yeah.
to be clickbait. If you want to hear things and see things that you would never do under normal circumstances, there you go.
Yeah, go to him. And it's not even clickbait at that point because you can get exactly what you thought you were getting.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I think that's the thing is like it was set up by the tone as well, like a tone of everything. Everything from the ground up was set to be like okay, this is why. Excuse me, this is an all big piss take. Like these like those B movies that know exactly what they are. Like when they say like they're totally what they actually mean is they're tonally correct and actually do exactly what they need to do well. Like no one goes in to watch Jackass to get to watch Oscar level drama. But because it's been set up from the ground up that this is what they're doing and they know exactly what they are and got the right tone, then people watch it because they know it's that good.
Well,
that's what they're gonna get.
No one goes to see Jackass and calls it Jackass. I've actually never heard it. I've never heard it being called like that before, even though lots of British people have seen that movie. That's actually kind of weird.
I've said Jackass because I know YouTube someone will come in. So, no, but also at the same time it's like you can say arse, and everyone's like, oh okay, but you say ass, and like, oh my god, it's offensive. Like, yeah, that again, the addition of the R makes everything okay.
R's is safe left
out. Yes.
I've been highly perturbed by this conversation.
Yeah, no, but no, it's surprising. I generally thought someone like Filthy. I mean, I get it. Yeah, he's been set up from ground zero, day one to be satirical. But like, I thought because of this, how quick everyone is to like shoot people down. I thought people would have looked 2 seconds in his video and been like, bang. But yeah, it's good that he did. He's good that he did.
Yeah. But it's also one of those things where people didn't bring up Kevin Hart's offensive gay jokes until he got a particular gig.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't think people go out of their way looking for it all the time, every day. But I think it's one of those things where he got a particular gig, and then people went, "Oh, he has probably did some research around him because some people may have never heard of him up until that point, and then only then did they actually do something about it."
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, maybe that's the thing with Yoshi. Maybe it's just maybe once he gets to a certain point, things will switch gear. But I don't know. Hopefully not. I think he learned his way out of it. I don't think he does any kind of ramifications for those, because if it was satirical, so it should have been fine. But you don't know with the internet. That's the thing. You can't properly go, oh yeah, this guy doesn't deserve it. Because other people, one day someone might go, actually, no, I don't like that. Because that's the thing, everything you say stays on the internet for generations, well, not generations, but long enough for someone to go, wait, what's that?
Yeah.
So it's that whole
kind of thing. It's changing. It's like, how do we react to changes in social beliefs?
Yeah.
Because you can easily make an argument that stuff that was produced 10, 15 years ago, and like we've changed how we react to those kind of things. Like what at the time was tried to be seen as progressive and trying to get their point of view, but now it's changed. Like, how do we react to that nowadays? Like, I mean, Pocahontas is now a controversial film, whereas at the time, the people making it, I know, they jumped off ship. People gave up on the Lion to do Pocahontas because they wanted to do that message. They wanted to get the first Native American lead on as a Disney character. It's like it'd be the equivalent of, like, imagine if Moana in 15 years' time is now seen as not appropriate anymore, but at the time it was seen as a good thing because you finally got that diversification. Like that, those kind of things that happened, that things were done because they wanted to increase, well, not done just to increase diversity, but done, and people wanted to be part of it because it was increasing diversity. But then later on was seen as bad because because it became popularized and we've moved on now. Like, for example, 15 years ago, we would not be talking about transgendered issues or even gender issues, or not, or even gay issues at that point. Like, that's why I think that's what a lot of people are forgetting, is how far we've actually come in the last 15 years in terms of being able to discuss these issues, what have been legal and all that kind of stuff.
On this note,
And
Pixar have apparently done it very successfully with the creation of a new movie called Soul, which focuses on a variety of sensitive topics like mental health issues and living in the black community, and apparently that's done very well. Not that I've seen it myself, but I've heard good things.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like, I think the thing is, like, even if you weren't, it wasn't like, I know they. That's the thing. I don't really think it was that much about black communities. It's like it's just a man who died who had a dream of becoming a pianist. Like, yes, they focused it around maybe the idea that it's around, I don't know, like, the only thing I could probably really think of that keeps being brought up is the barbershop. But even then, it's like the whole point of it is like it was the point. It felt like that all those. If you say it was about the black community, then it's like I feel like most of those things were secondary. It wasn't like them put them front and center, which is where I think a lot of pieces that try and improve diversity fall flat, is they make it the point that, oh yeah, this person is this, you're gonna know about it. Whereas it's like, when it's to normalize something, is to make it realize that actually putting those things is secondary. Like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this gay couple that you didn't realize, but they're there. It's like Holt in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Like, the main captain is gay, but it's rarely brought up. He's just the captain.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just
Yeah,
the
that's
captain.
that's probably the best way to do things. It's about character. Yeah, but rather than the whole trying to be trying to put, like, putting the primary focus on diversity doesn't necessarily work. I think making the main character be a character, but then also have diversity as a secondary factor is fantastic. So then there's not just, oh, this guy, it's someone who's has an interesting story, but also is. And it's like, I think that should be the way forward.
Yeah, but even then, like, even when they tried to address those issues and make sure they were well knowledgeable, like, for example, what they did with Pocahontas, they actually got people in to make sure it was somewhat authentic. But at the same time, though, it ended up being, is now considered a mildly racist thing because of a couple of songs, and then you go, but that's what they thought at the time. Like, you can't.
Yeah.
It's like doing a film about slavery and then having them not use the N word or treat them like scum and stuff like that. It's like, well, how else are you gonna We're gonna like pretend that people didn't think that. People didn't think that. Oh yeah, wait, you're a different color to us. We're gonna, and you've taken our men. We're gonna behave differently and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, if you can't accurately represent it because of all these kind of factors, then it's hard to really discuss it properly.
yeah.
And I think that's if you can't talk about things like that, if you censor it, then you can't have an honest discussion about it, and you can't properly say it's wrong. Because if you're hiding certain aspects of it, then it makes the whole conversation harder to truly discuss.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. But yeah.
Let your thoughts in the comments below whether you think Pocahontas is a racially charged film, or whether it should be censored or removed entirely from the catalogue, similar to what they did with Song of the South.
Viewer 1 and Viewer 2, Steve and Mona, explode. Explode that comment section.
Share it to your local. Share it to your local Karen.
Karen.
And also give your rating. If you've tried the new synthetic chicken nuggets, please let us know.
Oh yeah, that'd be good actually.
I'm curious. Is it good? Is it bad?
Episode 23 of the Nobodies. We try synthetic chicken.
What is it?
Oh my god, yes.
That should be our first non-lockdown production. A live video recording of the Nobodies with masks on, trying synthetic nuggets.
Here's a question. Okay, I'm gonna put a stop here so we can edit this bit out. Are we gonna be acknowledging the fact that these are personas?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So something reminded me of someone talking about VTube, like you brought up that we were doing a live video. We're interesting as we use personas. Well, how are we just gonna be doing VTubers of like our personas on a live stream? And just have our like caricatures to the top.
I mean, yeah. We can have like when the chicken goes in our mouth, we can edit it so that chicken flies or something. You know.
Make it like one of those really bad edits where you edit the hand out, so it's literally just a chicken nugget that floats in someone's mouth, but that someone is the actual person.
And no, like when the mouth opens and closes, it's just a square that goes up and down. Like the fucking nutcracker.
So it would literally be a game of Pong. It'd literally be a game of Pong with the rectangles moving up and down and the ball represents food coming in at different angles.
And then we would put artificial crunching noises.
And if someone chokes, you make like a Pac-Man noise of blue, 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 blue.
Yeah, let's subvert the expectations of our viewers. We'll clearly be drinking something according to the video, yet the audio will be crunch, 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 even though we're drinking.
Let's embrace the B-moviness.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But anyway, so that I think that concludes today's show, I believe, this episode. Do my co-hosts have any final words?
Just keep on watching Viewer 1 and 2, Steve and Mona. Reveal yourselves to us and keep watching. Thank you.
But, Jason?
Can't believe you keep listening to I can't believe you listening to this bullshit, but congratulations, you made it to the end of this episode. Stay tuned next time for more bullshit.
Well,
for context, I've got the audio track in front of me, and you can clearly tell when it became about movies. Like this, it's that moment. It's like the first 40 minutes. It's like sparing, like okay, he hasn't talked much. Then there was a 5-minute span where I do not shut the fuck up.
Oh. I mean, it's good. At least there's no dead air. You know.
Dead air on a podcast is terrible. Imagine listening to a podcast with dead air on it. You'd literally be standing there for 2 minutes, like, is my phone working?
Right, should we make that our like 25 subscriber special?
Just a dead air.
We'll get copyrighted.
Why 25?
silence?
I don't
not
know.
20 or 30? Why an odd number? 25 special, not 20.
Because
not
it's
30,
quarter of the
25.
way to 100k.
Yeah, it's an anniversary. It's a jubilee or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't
Because
know.
it's like, yeah, it is weird, like anniversaries like that. Anyway, we're doing end credits. We're not going to move on to another discussion.
Anyway, yeah. So thanks again for joining us on our show. Hopefully by the time you hear this, we will have released more episodes, and we will have actually had to, eat. Well, probably not by that quickly, but certainly soon. We definitely will be interested in hearing your comments about Pocahontas, synthetic chicken nuggets, and various other topics that we've discussed today. And until next time.
And as it's Valentine's Day, I think it's very appropriate we talk about synthetic meat.
Toodaloo.
And on that bombshell, good night.
On that quote, it's time to go. Stay safe, stay healthy. I want to say stay home, but you do, man. And until next time, peace.
And as always, keep the comment section haram.